So today's lesson, which is going to be kind of difficult, but I'm trying my best to give you the most information I possibly can without you being able to ask questions. It's a kind of long lesson anyway, so be prepared to watch this for about an hour. And I am going to be voicing because it is a kind of complex part of the language, but it also makes the language easier once you understand it better. So I'm going to explain it using my voice for today. And then if you have questions, please email them to me, or next week maybe we can talk about all meeting up on a Zoom or something so that we can work together, because you do have 50-point presentations about this information. So I've been telling you how excited I am about classifiers and how interesting they are, and it's my favorite part of the language, and so I'm going to explain all of these reasons why to you right now. Just bear with me because I have to say some things that you don't understand, and then they'll come back around full circle. So you guys need your books. I have it up here, but if you follow along on your own, that would be great. Page 192 and 193 for right now. Also, you're going to want those handouts that I emailed you. So basically, classifiers, right here, they are a large body of ASL hand shapes that convey multiple meanings depending on their use and context. So the main thing you need to realize here is that they are hand shapes. ASL signs, we know already, have 5 parameters, and every sign has all 5. Each of those parameters are considered linguistically as a phoneme. So these small units of language that don't hold meaning individually, but once you clump them together, they create units and signs and words and meanings. So every sign has all 5. Classifiers don't follow these signing rules because they don't have all 5. They have one piece of it, the hand shape. So it can't be considered a sign. So going back to this, these hand shapes are called classifiers because they reflect a class of shared characteristics. Now you can feel free to continue reading this, but what I want you to look at is this. So classifiers, again, one of the more challenging aspects of ASL, again, why I'm voicing this, is the concept of a classifier, a hand shape that reflects a particular characteristic. This concept is perhaps the most visual element that is both iconic and abstract in nature, which confuses ASL students, which makes sense, because how can something be iconic and hold visual meaning but also be abstract? So we'll get there, and you will see why. It is the most basic form. In its most basic form, a classifier is a hand shape that conveys details contributing to the overall concept of a sign, in addition to the sign's meaning. Hold on to that. For those fluent in ASL, using and understanding classifiers is nearly instinctual. As an ASL student, begin developing your classifier skills by closely observing why specific hand shapes are used for signs and the meanings of those hand shapes suggest. So some of these right here, these are very basic classifiers that we've already been using, but you didn't really realize that they were classifiers because of their visuality. So the sign to walk. We're using the B hand shape for all of these. These represent your feet, and then they move according to how you walk. So what makes it a classifier is this is not just feet. You move them in a manner of how you are walking. Are you strolling? Are you walking quickly? So you can change and add meaning to them. And so you're using this B. It's a flat, wide surface that would represent your feet, and then you motion like how you would sway back and forth. The next one is, again, the B hand shape, and it's a flat surface, so room. It's representing the walls, and then you're boxing them in, creating a room. Door, so we know the sign for door. So open the door, close the door, flat surface, and how it moves, you can add the meaning to it and make it more visual. And then lastly, this one you don't know yet, but like, can you think of what it is? Give me a second. So Flat, wide, horizontal surface that moves in a wave-like manner or fashion. So that would be a boat. It's a boat. And then if you visualize a boat in your brain, obviously not like a yacht or something, but like a speedboat, it has that typical shape. Up here, it gives a couple examples of, so like the classifier F would represent something round or cylindrical, like a post. Whereas if you went like this, maybe it's like a light post outside because it's bigger, so it shows shape and size. And then if something that's really big, like a not a pyramid, but a column, say at like the Roman columns, or if you go to Greece, the Parthenon. So go back down. These stories right here, we're going to watch them as examples. So just give that a minute. And some of the classifier signs that you need to know to get started, CL3, this 3-hand shape, always represents vehicles. So in this instance here, they're saying accident. So going back to like ASL dictionaries and why you have to know what you mean, and you have to know more about the language. So like if you say like, oops, I had an accident. Like you would say accident or mistake versus accident. But you'll see people signing, like signed exact English, and they'll be like, oh, I had an accident. But these are representing cars. This isn't the sign for car. And then representing the accident. And I showed you before that story about me getting pulled over, showing you how visual the language is. I think that was last semester. But accident, what's so cool about this isn't always how the accident happened. It wasn't maybe a head-on collision. Maybe you got rear-ended. Maybe you backed into someone. Maybe they T-boned you. Maybe it was a side swipe. So because you can manipulate it, that's what makes it a classifier. And how do I know these are cars? I don't. So getting to our handout in a second, you always have to say what you're talking about before you use a classifier to represent it, because the classifiers don't hold all of the meaning that signs do. So I have to say, okay, so maybe this was a van and this was a bus, and then they had an accident. So that's the point of this sign here, bus. You need to be able to differentiate. Was it a car? Was it a bus? The sign for classifier, obviously. To dance, so we talked about our legs before, so we're using this upside down V shape. So you can jump, you can dance, you can kneel, you can sit. Remember that activity we did? So anything you're representing with this is showing your body and your legs and their movement. Day one of the first signs I ever taught you was nice to meet you. And I kept saying these represent people. So if you imagine your pointer finger as a person and they come together and they're meeting, all of your fingers represent individual people. So 2 people, so this instance, a line, after you get to about 4 or 5, it's an undetermined amount of people. So, and then the more you move it, the more people there are. So like this could represent 8 people in a line, or you can say, and extend that line, or maybe the line is busy and like wild and like you've been waiting all day for concert tickets or something. I don't know. It's not really a thing anymore with the internet. But so depending on how you move them shows more or less people, and then it could even get smaller, and then it's your turn. V also represents your eyes. So like see you later, that sign kind of represents your eyes because you're looking into the future. Look up at the clock, look at me, look in the past or behind me. I look at someone else, they look away. So your eyes and how you see things. Another sign, motorcycle, which in itself is very visual and iconic, but then if I want to go back to showing how my motorcycle moved, I'd go back to the 3. So I have to say it was a motorcycle, so I know it's not a car, and then how it moves. And then horse, riding a horse, so your legs go over the horse, and then how it moves. So those are some classifiers just to get us started. So we have these flat B hand shapes, and then we have these. And then we talked about like size and shape a little bit right here. So now I want you to bring up this worksheet that I gave you. I need to see it better on my end. It's fine. So Recently, I had gone to Gallaudet University, and I was talking to some of the people in the linguistics department, and we were talking about classifiers, and that classifiers and their definition wasn't enough in order for it to fit into all the linguistic definitions and make the most sense. They need to be called depicting verbs. Let me drag this over. Depicting verbs right here, and depicting nouns and classifiers. So they're calling them DV and VCLs, which is a lot to sign. So in conversation or in class, we're still going to call them classifiers, CLs. But basically, they function similar to pronouns. First, the noun is signed before using a classifier that represents or depicts, which makes sense, depicting verb. It depicts that noun or verb phrase. Adding verbs and meaning to the pronouns. So you're adding to the noun and verbs that you've already stated first, like that car, and then how it moves. So classifiers or depicting verbs are designated hand shapes. Again, here's that word, hand shapes. And or rule-governed pantomime. And we're going to get to that in 1 second. There's one exception to this hand shape rule, and it's this rule-grounded pantomime. Used to represent nouns and verbs. It adds additional information to the nouns and verbs, and there are 8 types of those. So that is very, very important for you to remember and to know there are 8 classifier types that are different than classifier hand shapes, and that's why you need an extra sheet of paper to take notes on, because we're going to talk about those 8 classifier types in a second. So then here's a better chart. The category is the depicting verbs or depicting nouns. Their abbreviation VDND. So a noun or a verb analyzed as a productive combination of meaningful units and hand shapes. So those meaningful units, remember, are morphemes. So they're small units of language that hold meaning, but not quite enough to be a full word or phrase until you start chunking them together. So these are meaningful units of hand shapes, location, and movement, and thus not listed in the dictionary or lexical database because they're tacked on, these tiny units are tacked on to the bigger aspect, creating new meanings. So you can't put them all in a dictionary because they can be added to anything. So how you use these units is your choice, and you can be creative and actually create your own as long as they still follow some of the rules, which is very fascinating. So they can't be documented into our lexical database because they're constantly changing. And then these are often called the classifier signs. So for example, the whole verb phrase is that the car is turning a corner. Okay, so the lexical or the words that you would find in a dictionary is car and turns and corner. But that's not visual, and that's not the point of ASL. So what you would do is you would say you have a car, then you would represent your car by showing that 3 hand shape, and then you could actually move the car to turn the corner, and then that even adds direction to the right or left. You can add even more meaning that it's a bumpy road, or it's a windy road, or it goes up and down. So it's how it's moving, where it's going, and so all these meanings are added to this verb phrase using these classifiers, and that's why they can't go into our dictionary or lexicon. Or a man passes the cup. So I need man and I need cup, and then he's not passing, he's handing it. Where is he handing it? Who's he handing it to? And then you can even roll shift and then receive the action in a similar manner. Super cool. So before I talk about these comics, the really cool part about manual and visual languages is these verb phrases and these words and things that would naturally go into a dictionary, and you would pull out the words to create sentences or signs. In manual language, they stack. And it is the only form of language where linguistic features can stack. So verbal languages are linear, and you can only say one thing at a time. Whereas in ASL and other signed languages, you can portray multiple things at one time within a singular hand shape. So it is super cool, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. This That Deaf Guy Comics is a deaf guy. The characters in the story are this kid and his parents most of the time. His parents are deaf, and he is a coda, child of a deaf adult. It just brings to light a lot of maybe oppression that deaf people see, or questions that kids have to answer having deaf parents, or just cool linguistic aspects of the language. So if you want to look them up, they're pretty cool. But for this instance, don't look ahead in the comic. Just look frame for frame, and I'm going to sign it to you. So basically, in this comic, he changes perspective, which is also really cool when it comes to ASL. You can go in and out of perspectives. So it's as if I am this man, and I'm zipping up my jacket, and I'm putting on my helmet, and I'm on my motorcycle, and I'm vroom, 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 like revving the engine, and then next thing you know, he changes the motorcycle from being a motorcycle to being the 3-hand shape and showing how it goes. And then it says ASL classifiers rock, because you're becoming part of this language, and it's not acting, and it's not gesturing, it's rule governed. So it makes it really neat. And so he's using his motorcycle almost as like he would use a Hot Wheel car, but instead he's just using his hand shapes. So that's kind of cute. And then in this one, here is just a normal hearing child with hearing parents, and then this is the coda. And they're playing with Play-Doh. And so he says, it's cool that you can sign. Is sign language the same as English? As we know, I've said a million times, absolutely not. So as a kid, he's like, not really. And then he, in his little kid way, explains the difference from English. So in English, he draws out with the Play-Doh the word dragon. And when I'm talking or you're reading and you say dragon, everyone's going to come up with a picture of a dragon in their head from something they've read before, or a movie they've seen, or how you envision a dragon to look. But in ASL, here he actually molds out and creates his own dragon. And if I was going to explain a dragon, it's going to be the dragon that I want you to see. So I would say maybe, I might fingerspell dragon or sign dragon, dragon, like the fire. But I maybe would say I'm like green or purple, depending on what it is, like all over, and then maybe like scaly here, eyes like beating and glowing with a snout with like nostrils and steam coming out of that, and then fire, and then wings like, but he also has hands with claws, So I paint that picture for you to see it. So English, this linear form, dragon, your interpretation. But ASL, I'm going to be so visual, and I'm going to create this dragon for you to see. So we're all picturing the same thing. So really cool. These classifiers, we're going to get to that later, maybe even next week, based on time. Because you also, hopefully prior to watching this video, you took your quiz, just as if we were in class. But now I'm going to need you to bring up your notes. And I'm going to try my best to type and speak at the same time. But we're going to talk about those 8 classifier types that I was talking about. So there are 8 classifier types. And this will help you organize classifiers in your mind as well, without being overwhelmed. Like I'm saying, yes, you can create them, and they don't fall into the lexicon, and they don't follow the rules, and let me plug in my computer. So that can be overwhelming for some. So when we have these types, this is going to clarify a lot more. So talking about our first classifier type is a descriptive classifier. And we usually abbreviate that as a DCL. And a descriptive classifier, so every classifier that you use, let me make myself a little bit bigger. Okay, so every classifier that you use is going to fall into one of these types. And that's how you're going to know if you're using them correctly as well. So a descriptive classifier, obviously describes what something looks like. So our key word here is looks. So anything you describe how it looks is going to be a descriptive classifier. So I would say, you know, my shirt today is a V-neck, descriptive classifier, and it's orange and it's orange and it has dots, polka dots. So my V-neck and the polka dots are classifiers. I could also describe flower patterns. So I'm not gonna like maybe the shirt has 3 flowers on it, so but if it's just a pattern all over, I would say flower and then pattern. If it's striped, does it have thick stripes? Is it zigzaggy stripes? Is it plaid? We could do hairstyles. So my hair is like pulled back a little bit with a little wave. Is it super curly? Is boys' hair shaved really thin, or is it kind of whoopy? Do you have a bun? So like describing how anything looks. We can look at my curtains real fast. They're kind of like different colors, or they kind of like. So describing what things look like. The second one is an instrumental classifier, which is an ICL, and it describes how something is used or works. So, used is a very important word here, or works. So anytime I use an instrumental classifier, and if you want to think about it as like instruments, like how do you use a trumpet? You know, like you push the buttons here, or a flute, or a guitar. You know, you're showing how it's used. Think about a water bottle. If it's a plastic bottle that you just bought from the grocery store, you twist the top like this, but maybe it's a hydro flask and you have to change your hand shape. Maybe it has a flip-up nozzle. Doorknobs. How does it work? I turn the doorknob, but is it a round doorknob, or is it a tea kettle, you know? So like it's got its spout here, so I'm using a descriptive classifier to show what it looks like, a handle, but once I pick it up and pour it and show something's pouring out of it, it becomes an instrumental classifier. Okay? Number 3 is a body classifier, BCL. This one often gets confused, but it's very simple actually, and this is where that pantomime and gesture changes the hand shape rule. So a body classifier shows what your body is actually doing. So if we were in class right now and I would look out at all of you, I'm sure all of your dispositions and demeanors would be a little bit differently. Is someone sitting like this? Is someone like, oh, is someone on their phone? Is someone, like laying down? Is so what is your body actually doing? And you can just represent it. Say I'm on a roller coaster and it's my friend here sitting and me here, and she has her hands up, and I'm like, dear God, please let me be okay. I'm showing my actual body what it's actually doing. So the next one is a body part classifier. So that is a BPCL. That is the only one that has a 4-letter acronym. So there's a difference between the two, and sometimes people confuse the two. Body part. So this is actually what your body is actually doing is the important part. And then BPCL is your hands become another body part. So your hands. These are keyword. So when I'm using my legs, or someone jumping, or if an F becomes my eyes, I look up, I look down, I look over, or V, my feet when I'm walking. So anything my hand becomes a different body part is a body part classifier. Number 5 an element classifier, which is an ECL. This definition is super easy because I don't know how to explain it other than your hands represent the environment and elements. Examples: wind, rain, any water, fire, smoke, etc. So any of the elements. Is it raining? Did it become a flood and that water rise? I have a cup full of water and it spills. The water goes out that way. Or did it come and spill all over me and then over my lap? There's a house and it's on fire, but did it get engulfed with fire? Is the smoke coming off of it? The wind, and then the wind can affect things. So tree, and then the wind's affecting the tree, so the tree blows. Things like that. Number 6, semantic classifier. I've realized that many students, SCL, have a hard time remembering this definition because that word's semantic. But all it really means is how something, and I keep using the word something, I should be using like nouns and verbs, how something moves. So if this is a person and this is my person walking, are they just slowly strolling? Are they walking quickly? Or even this, or is my car going down a bumpy road, or is it a windy road? So you add movement to your hand shapes. So how something moves, cars, people, animals, being affected by the element classifiers, any of that. Number 7 is a plural classifier. This definition sometimes seems silly when I'm writing it in class and people laugh. PCO. But let me just highlight your italicized moves because that's what's important. A plural classifier can't spell. Okay, so it represents a specific, my computer feels like it is going to burn up. Represents a specific number or an undefined number of something. So that seems kind of funny and a little redundant, but it really depends on what you're talking about. So are you representing 3 of something? So I arrived to work in the morning and the parking lot has just a few cars, like I can show 3 cars in the parking lot. But when I add movement to it, I can show more of something. So I can say, but then when I leave work, the parking lot has cars, rows and rows of cars. I don't know how many there are. In my classroom in high school, I have specific numbers of posters on the wall. So I can say posters, boom, 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 like 5. But at YSU, there's bulletin boards in the classroom. So I could say posters, like, there's just a bunch of them. I don't know how many there are. I would never show probably more than 5 of something. It just becomes too many. You don't want to sit there and count out everything. So if I said in my students, Thursday night, I have like 5 to 7 students. So I could easily say like, oh, my students sit, and then I'm going to manipulate that sitting sign to be facing me because that's how I perceive it as my signer's perspective. I'm looking at you guys, so your legs are facing me. So I would say, like Liz and Emily sit here, but Jess and Megan sit here, and then Sally, Lacey, and Lauren sit back here, show them. But on Wednesday night, I have almost 20 students. So I would say, students sitting and show the rows of desks, or rows of kids sitting, looking at me, students, not kids. Even a bookshelf, I can use both a specified number and an unspecified number at the same time. So I could say my bookshelf, and then I can sign that it has 3 shelves, and then the books are, just rows and rows of books. So it's really cool that you can show both unspecified and specified numbers. And then the last one is a locative classifier, LCL. And this This shows where something is, but the key word here is in relationship to something else. So I can't show, like we were talking about it when we were talking about the buildings on campus, and like the library's over here, and is it near or far, or what's it next to? We're using this claw hand shape, which is a classifier to represent something big, a big structure like a building. But I can't just say it's here. I have no relationship. I don't have a map created in front of me. So it has to be in relationship to something else. So you have to have at least two things. So if I said, I teach in this building here, and then my car is parked here in the parking deck, or there's a tree and I'm standing next to it or in front of it or behind it. So it shows location in relationship to anything else. So you have to have two. Okay, so these are our 8 classifier types. And again, going back to that, English and spoken languages are linear, and ASL or manual languages, visual languages, can be stacked. I can use in a singular sign all of these, really, or like right now, let's see, I can do, let's talk about, we'll use car. So I'll do my car, and I get in the car, I can shift it, I can put my body in the car, buckle up how I would, and so now I have my car. We know I've used a body classifier. It's kind of linear in this aspect, but once my car starts moving, it's a semantic classifier, how it's moving, right? But if there's 2 cars, this one's bumping, or maybe it's got like a flat tire, so now I have a plural and a semantic classifier and locative classifier. So you see how they build and stack, which is really, really cool. And I want you to appreciate it just as much as I do, because it is awesome. Okay, so now that you have those notes, we need to go back to your book and actually finish our lesson. That is not it. Here we go. So we talked about some of these classifiers and these hand shapes, but now we're going to talk about specific hand shapes. We just learned 8 classifier types. You have an ICL, a BCL, a BPCL, a DCL, okay? But then if you put CL first, CL:1, that is talking about the specific hand shape. So the hand shapes, infinite number. I mean, every letter of the alphabet plus this other worksheet that I gave you has a lot of them on it. All these classifier hand shapes. Okay, those are not classifier types. Those are just hand shapes that fall into the types depending on how you're using them. So today we've already talked about CLB, CL3, but we're going to get in depth into CL1 and CL upside down V. So first we have our CL1 as an individual. Generally represents an individual and its location, action, or manner. So the locative classifier, semantic classifier, descriptive classifier, instrumental classifier. So you manipulate the sign to reflect details such as walking slowly, mouth morphemes, non-manual markers, super important while you're using classifiers. So hunched over, move your body too, make it visual, moving quickly, fall down, other characteristics. CL1 depicts up to 5 individuals engaging in activity. So sometimes they'll say that this is a CL1 too because you're adding one finger to represent more people. CL5 must be used if you're representing large crowds. So that's that number, undefined number in our plural classifiers. And CL1 also represents cylindrical objects as well, like logs, or if we're talking about your desk and like the poles, like the 4 legs of it. Also use eye gaze to show the beginning and ending points. So, if we're starting here and then I walk to there, I'm going to look to where they're going. This example here is he or she is going to the office. Most of the time too, we're still using topic, comment, structure, so you would probably want to set up office first, so the office is here and then he's going to it. But look at these non-manual markers, And the second one is he is going to the office. So they kind of like changed it to show they slowly walking to the office. So this could change meaning significantly. Is this person just strolling to the office because they have to drop off a paper? or they're going to the office because they're upset about something, they're going to the office, whereas this person maybe just got in trouble, so they're trying to like lag the time, or maybe they're just carelessly walking to the office. It really depends on the rest of your sentence or conversation, but just because of a little movement and change to a classifier, the whole thing has changed. So now I'm going to ask you to please actively do this. You using this language and on your hands yourself is going to benefit you. And you have a homework assignment where you have to post a video of you signing anyway, as if we were doing dialogues in class, because I need you to use the language as well as seeing the language. So you're going to only use CL1, and these examples were geniusly created to force you into using these correctly. So you know you're using CL1 only to represent all 10 of these. Yes, you need more context and you need to sign a topicalized sentence, but for the most part, just figure out the classifier and how it would be used in numbers 1 through 10. So I want you to pause this video and practice numbers 1 through 10 now. Okay, so hopefully you're finished and you're restarting your video now, and I'm going to sign these examples, not the full sentence, because this video is going to take about 6 hours to upload. So he is hunched over. So obviously we're going to want to describe who is he, point to he, say who he is, and then he's hunched over. Hopefully your signs match mine. If not, I'm not saying that you're wrong, because you can be creative and change them, but just remember we're using CL1. So they ran that way. So they, as in maybe one person that we don't know, like, oh, they went that way. They ran that way, or that way. She's moving at a snail's pace. So he turned around. So maybe he's sitting here, and he turned around. Or he turned around that way. Or he's looking at me, and then I looked at him, so he turned around. Not in the frame, you know? They went that way and then went the other direction. So this way and then this way, you know? Sometimes I do that while I'm walking. I'm like, where am I going? Right, I'm not going the right way. And so instead of just like turning direction and looking like a crazy person, I might look at my phone or throw up a grand gesture, like, ooh, I'm going the wrong way. Like someone called me back or something, I don't know. But, you know, I could be walking. Oh, crap. Phone. And then turn around. He's in a rush, so he quickly, she fell down. Walking slowly again. The three of them are moving towards me. So again, sometimes, this is a three-hand shape, but sometimes we might use this to represent three individual people. So they were walking towards me. And then two people bowed to each other. Cool. So hopefully your creative visual brain is starting to churn. I know some people are going to struggle with this because you like rules. This means this. So we're going to break a lot of those rules, and I think at first it is a struggle for everyone, but the more you use them and the more you see them, you're like, oh, visual, I get it. So don't get too frustrated. We're going to see them over and over again. I'm going to push these classifiers at you. Your quiz next week is a classifier quiz, so just prepare yourself, because once you learn classifiers, they're mandatory for the language. They should be in every conversation, almost every sentence you use, to represent visual language. So this next one is CL, upside down V, which is typically a person's legs or eyes. It can also represent a million other things, but typically this is what we use them for. So they represent the actions of an individual legs or eyes. We've already talked about it: sit, jump, stand, lay down. Non-manual signals are especially important when using the classifier to depict the eyes, because the facial expressions distinguish the difference between, like, is that like curious, or did someone give me a dirty look? And initially your facial expressions are going to represent who's looking, but then you can switch them to be your reaction to it. So like, give me a dirty look, like, ugh, and then my reaction is I look back. So now I'm using my body classifier to show what I did and then my reaction. But when this is moving, your facial expressions connect to this. So they describe it as the whole body, as in laying down. Often people will use this and say it's a body classifier. It is not your body using your body for what it's actually doing. This would still be body part. Read this FYI. Classifiers play an important role in ASL literature, especially classifier stories. Huge part of the culture, and that's what we're going to be doing the next 4 weeks is using classifier stories. Okay, so again, I want you to pause this video and you're going to do these 10 examples using this classifier only. Okay, so try your best. Again, they're made to force you into using them correctly. So go ahead and pause it now. Okay, so hopefully you practice them. I'm going to go over them quickly, not in full sentence structure, but just so you get the idea of the classifier. So he gave me a dirty look. She's walking home, so typically I'd want to set up home or her house and that she walks to it. Again, I'm not walking, she's walking, so I'm showing her legs. He was walking and then fell onto the ground, or maybe he slipped on ice and fell this way and landed on his butt. You can always bring the floor up. You don't want to like move too much, that's exhausting. I like to look around, which is very true. I am constantly people watching, looking over my shoulder, restaurants, church, whatever. They're standing across from each other. I'm watching you like a hawk. So after this classifier unit, we're going to talk about time and how time influences our signs. So anything that happens continuously for an extended period of time, you have to add movement to your sign to show that it happened for an extended period of time. And that movement is a circular motion. So I'm watching you like a hawk means that I'm staring at you for an extended period of time. I'm making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or not doing anything bad. So I'm watching you like a hawk. So you add that circular motion. And then you might want to squint your eyes. That's what you would do. I want to lay down. Children enjoy playing hopscotch. He keeps looking at me and then looking away. So awkward. And then they are staring at each other. So you still might want that circular motion to show that it's continuous action. Continuous action. Okay, so lastly here, we're going to stack our classifiers, which is so cool, and I love it. So we're going to use for each of these examples the CLV and CL1. So you need both in each sentence. So go ahead and try to practice 1 through 5 now. Okay, so hopefully you've finished. So can you walk on a balance beam? So it's a yes or no question, so your eyebrows should be up. You have your balance beam, which is your CL1, and then your upside down V. So like, can you? You? The mother examined the boy from head to toe. So the boy's going to be standing as CL1, and then the mother looked him up and down. So eyes. He walked over to the man lying on the floor. Now, this could be represented in 2 different ways, because the first time I read it, I thought it said he walked over the man on the floor. So if he walked over the man on the floor would be this, and then he would walk, and you could show the motion of him stepping over. But what it actually says is he walked over to the man lying on the floor. So in that instance, as someone laying down, you want to represent the whole body, and then he walked over to it, and then maybe look down. Don't trip over that thing. So like warning, that sign from a long time ago. Don't forget, like, hey, that thing, don't fall over it. And then I'm learning to log rule. So the only thing I could think of is that thing at the park that, like, you know, when you hold on to the things, so it spins while you run on it. And then right here, this quote, no written or spoken sentence can reach the mind as swiftly as the thing seen, the language of images. So what's so cool is a picture can be expressed in any language. You can show a picture to anyone from any culture and tell them to describe that picture in their language, and they can. But words, there are different words. There's different pragmatics. Pragmatics are the social norms that we have that form based on the language that we use. So poetry and stories and things like that can't always be translated from language to language. Idioms. We say, oh, it's raining cats and dogs, meaning it's raining heavily, whereas other languages would never say that. So you would say it and they'd be like, say what? And other languages have their norms as well that don't have English translations to them. But what's beautiful about sign language is a picture can be expressed in any language. So you can visually represent something, and so that makes it really cool. Okay, so last part of this lesson is, and I posted it in Blackboard already, which would be your dialogue, as if you were with somebody. But I want you to use these classifiers that we talked about today. You could also use be and 3 to create a story of something naturally that has happened to you, not like an elaborate made-up story, but like you're using it in conversation. Most of our conversations with our family and friends anyway are like, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened today. I got pulled over. So my pulled over story, So I was going really fast. I'm using my semantic classifier showing that like even the road moving fast under me, my car's going fast. Now I'm using a locative classifier. I pass another car. It turns around. It pulls me over. The guy gets out of his car. He walks to me. B classifier. My window goes down. Grab the ticket, So explain a short story of something that's happened to you, walking to class, an incident that happened, anything. Create a short story that is in topic comment structure. It's worth 7 points instead of 5 because I know you have to make a video and send it to me. Sometimes the videos don't upload well. I might ask you to make a YouTube link or email it to me if it doesn't post well. But create a little instance of something that you would tell someone that happened to you using classifiers and signs. You have to use both. You have to say what it is before you classify it. So that's today's lesson. If you have any questions, please email me. And if I might email you about uploading or downloading or whatever app, Zoom, so that when we start creating our stories next week, we can all collaborate together. Remember your stories and your homework and your quizzes. Try to do them from 6 to 8 during your class time. We're going to keep this as a class time. Things will be uploaded during class time or earlier. But if we do have our class meeting sessions, I will do them between 6 and 8. Okay? So see you guys soon.